As the rain poured relentlessly, the windshield wipers on my car fought a losing battle against the onslaught of water. The narrow road twisted and turned through the dense woods, with the towering trees casting eerie shadows in the dim glow of my headlights. Thunder roared overhead, echoing through the silence of the ancient forest, and the flashes of lightning momentarily illuminated the desolate landscape. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, my knuckles turning white as I navigated the treacherous path. The only sounds were the raindrops tapping on the roof and the distant rumble of thunder. I was miles away from any recognizable town when, suddenly, my car sputtered and jerked before coming to a complete stop. The engine died, leaving me stranded in the middle of nowhere. I sighed in frustration, realizing that my phone had no signal. I decided to brave the storm and attempt to find help on foot. The rain soaked through my clothes as I trudged along the road, hoping to come across a house or some shelter. After what felt like an eternity, the silhouette of an old village emerged from the mist. The village seemed frozen in time, with its cobblestone streets and quaint cottages that looked like they had stood for centuries. The flickering gas lamps barely illuminated the narrow alleyways, casting long, ominous shadows. As I walked deeper into the village, the air became colder, and an unshakable sense of dread settled over me. Through the sheets of rain, I spotted a figure standing in the doorway of one of the dilapidated houses. As I approached, I could make out the silhouette of a woman, her long, wet hair clinging to her pale face. She beckoned me inside with a frail hand, her voice barely audible over the howling wind. Reluctantly, I entered the ancient house, which creaked with each step. The flickering candlelight revealed a room adorned with dusty, moth-eaten tapestries and worn-out furniture. The lady led me to a chamber adorned with faded portraits of royalty, a room that, she claimed, once belonged to a long-forgotten king. "I am the caretaker of this place," she whispered, her eyes piercing through the dim light. "You are lucky to have found shelter here." I thanked her, still uneasy about the strange atmosphere that clung to the air. The woman insisted on making me tea, disappearing into the shadows of the decrepit kitchen. As I sat alone in the eerie room, I began to notice peculiar sounds, whispers that seemed to emanate from the ancient walls. The flickering candle flames danced with an otherworldly energy as the room grew colder. Suddenly, the portraits on the walls seemed to come alive, their eyes following my every move. I tried to dismiss it as a trick of my imagination, but the feeling of being watched intensified. The old caretaker returned with a steaming cup of tea, her eyes hollow and distant. As I sipped the hot liquid, she began to recount the history of the village, a tale of betrayal, dark rituals, and a vengeful spirit that haunted the descendants of the once mighty king. According to the caretaker, the king had ruled with an iron fist, mercilessly suppressing any rebellion. One fateful night, the villagers, desperate for freedom, conducted a forbidden ritual to curse the king's bloodline. The curse, she claimed, still lingered, seeking revenge on any outsider who dared to tread on the haunted grounds. As she spoke, the room seemed to come alive with malevolent energy. The portraits twisted and contorted, their expressions changing to grotesque sneers. A cold wind swept through the chamber, extinguishing the candles. Panic gripped me as the darkness enveloped the room. The woman's eyes glowed with an otherworldly light as she uttered an incantation in a language long forgotten. Shadows danced on the walls, taking on grotesque forms that seemed to writhe in agony. The temperature dropped further, and a disembodied voice echoed through the air, whispering ancient curses. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding in my chest. The caretaker's face contorted into a sinister grin as she revealed her true identity, a vessel for the malevolent spirit that sought revenge for the sins of the long-dead king. The room echoed with unearthly laughter as the apparitions closed in, their cold fingers reaching out to me. In sheer terror, I stumbled out of the haunted chamber and into the stormy night. The village, once quaint and charming, now seemed like a nightmare come to life. The rain poured harder, as if the heavens themselves wept for the cursed souls trapped in this spectral realm. I ran through the winding streets, the village twisting and distorting around me. The houses seemed to breathe with a malevolent life, their windows glowing with an unholy light. The whispers grew louder, accusing voices of the betrayed seeking retribution. As I reached the edge of the village, I stumbled upon an ancient graveyard, the tombstones weathered and worn. The caretaker's voice echoed in the wind, warning that escape was impossible. The cursed spirit, she claimed, would pursue me until the end of my days. Driven by fear, I sprinted into the darkness beyond the village, the haunting cries of the vengeful spirits fading behind me. The rain continued to pour, washing away the remnants of the cursed village from my skin. But the memories lingered, haunting my every thought. To this day, I cannot forget the horrors I witnessed in that ancient village, the whispers, the apparitions, and the malevolent caretaker who served as a conduit for the vengeful spirit. The rain still sends shivers down my spine, and thunderstorms bring back the chilling echoes of that cursed night. Whether it was a nightmare or a glimpse into a supernatural realm, I cannot say for certain. But one thing is clear, that village, with its twisted history and malevolent spirits, will forever be etched in the darkest corners of my mind. And as I drive through rainy nights, I can't help but wonder if the ghosts of the past are still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for their next unsuspecting victim. As I sprinted into the darkness beyond the village, the haunting cries of the vengeful spirits fading behind me, I felt a surge of relief. The rain continued to pour, washing away the remnants of the cursed village from my skin. But the memories lingered, haunting my every thought. As I ventured further into the unknown, the landscape changed. The dense woods gave way to an open field, and the storm began to subside. The distant rumble of thunder faded, and the rain transformed into a gentle drizzle. Exhausted and disoriented, I stumbled upon a road that seemed to stretch endlessly into the horizon. I walked along the deserted road, my mind still reeling from the horrors I had experienced in that ancient village. The air felt lighter, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted as I left the cursed grounds behind. The rain-soaked fields and distant hills painted a serene, albeit eerie, landscape. As I continued my journey, a passing car finally stopped, its headlights cutting through the mist. The driver, a kind-hearted stranger, offered me a ride. I hesitated for a moment, my mind still clouded with the memories of the supernatural ordeal. However, the need for warmth and safety prevailed, and I gratefully accepted the lift. The stranger, sensing my unease, asked about my harrowing experience. Hesitant at first, I recounted the tale of the ancient village, the malevolent spirits, and the caretaker who served as a vessel for the vengeful king's curse. The driver listened intently, occasionally glancing at me with a mix of skepticism and concern. As the car sped away from the cursed village, the rain gradually ceased, and the clouds parted to reveal a moonlit sky. The air inside the car felt comforting, and the hum of the engine drowned out the lingering echoes of the supernatural encounter. The stranger assured me that I was safe now, far from the clutches of the malevolent spirits. The road stretched ahead, winding through unfamiliar landscapes. Eventually, the stranger dropped me off in a nearby town, where I could find help for my car troubles. Grateful for the escape from the haunted village, I thanked the stranger and watched as the car disappeared into the night. As I stood in the quiet town, I couldn't shake the feeling that the events of that night had left an indelible mark on my soul. The rain-soaked streets seemed to whisper ancient secrets, and the distant echoes of thunder resonated with the memories of the vengeful spirits. I wondered if the curse had truly been left behind or if it lingered, waiting for an opportunity to resurface. Haunted by the events of that fateful night, I continued my journey, forever changed by the encounter with the supernatural. The road stretched ahead, winding through the mysteries of the night, and the echoes of the ancient village remained etched in the recesses of my mind. As I drove away, I couldn't help but glance nervously into the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the spectral faces of the cursed king and his vengeful minions. The road, however, stretched empty and desolate, as if the horrors of that night were nothing more than a distant dream. But deep down, I knew that the memory of the haunted village would stay with me, a chilling reminder that there are realms beyond our understanding, where ancient curses and vengeful spirits lurk in the shadows, waiting for unsuspecting travelers to cross their path. And as I drove into the night, the moon casting an eerie glow on the road ahead, I couldn't shake the feeling that the supernatural was never far away, that the line between the living and the dead was thinner than we dared to imagine. As I continued my journey through the night, the road seemed to stretch endlessly before me. The eerie glow of the moon illuminated the landscape, casting long shadows that danced along the edges of the highway. The events of the haunted village lingered in my thoughts, like a ghostly specter refusing to be banished. As I drove, the rain-soaked scenery transformed into a surreal dreamscape. The trees along the roadside took on twisted shapes, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The intermittent flicker of the moonlight played tricks on my mind, creating illusions of phantom figures lurking in the darkness. The road led me through desolate landscapes, each bend revealing a new realm of uncertainty. The air inside the car felt heavy, charged with an otherworldly energy that sent shivers down my spine. I couldn't shake the feeling that the supernatural forces that had plagued me in the village were still lingering, following me like silent shadows. My eyes were heavy with exhaustion, and the rhythmic hum of the tires on the wet pavement threatened to lull me into an uneasy sleep. But every time I closed my eyes, the images of the haunted village and the malevolent spirits flooded my mind, jolting me awake with a start. In the distance, a dilapidated sign pointed towards an old motel. The flickering neon lights spelled out vacancy in faded letters. Despite my reservations, the weariness in my bones persuaded me to seek refuge for the night. The motel seemed like a haven from the spectral terrors that had pursued me. As I parked the car, the eerie silence of the night enveloped me. The rain had ceased, leaving behind a stillness that felt almost unnatural. The motel's flickering lights seemed to be the only signs of life in the desolate surroundings. I approached the front desk, where a tired-looking clerk greeted me with a weary smile. There was an air of resignation about the place, as if it had weathered its fair share of strange occurrences. I booked a room, and as I walked down the dimly lit corridor, I couldn't shake the feeling that unseen eyes were watching my every move. The motel room, though modest, offered a sense of temporary solace. I locked the door behind me, hoping to shut out the lingering phantoms of the haunted village. The dim light of the bedside lamp cast long shadows on the walls, and the creaking of the floorboards echoed through the silence. As I lay in bed, the events of the night replayed in my mind like a haunting film. The caretaker, the cursed king, and the malevolent spirits seemed to materialize in the darkness, their ghostly presence filling the room. The air grew heavy with an oppressive energy, and I felt as if I were on the precipice of another supernatural encounter. Just as I began to drift into an uneasy sleep, a sound pierced the stillness, a distant, mournful wail that sent shivers down my spine. It was a sound that seemed to carry the weight of centuries, echoing the pain and suffering of those who had been touched by the curse. I jolted upright, my heart racing, and the room seemed to close in around me. The shadows danced along the walls, taking on grotesque shapes that whispered of ancient secrets. The air grew colder, and the atmosphere became charged with an unseen force. A soft voice, almost a whisper, called out my name from the shadows. It was the voice of the caretaker, her spectral presence haunting the room. The apparitions from the haunted village materialized before me, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. Panic set in as I realized that the malevolent spirits had followed me, their vengeful energy permeating the very walls of the motel. The room seemed to warp and contort, as if the boundaries between the living and the dead were dissolving. In a desperate bid to escape, I stumbled towards the door, fumbling with the lock. The wailing grew louder, echoing through the corridors of the motel. The flickering lights cast erratic shadows, distorting the very fabric of reality. Just as I managed to unlock the door, a cold gust of wind rushed through the room, extinguishing the lamp. In the darkness, the apparitions closed in, their spectral fingers reaching out. The air was thick with a malevolent presence, and the room pulsed with an unholy energy. I stumbled out into the corridor, the wailing reaching a deafening crescendo. The motel seemed to twist and contort, its walls pulsating with an unseen force. The apparitions followed, their ghostly figures dancing along the edges of my vision. Driven by terror, I sprinted down the corridor, the spectral wailing echoing in my ears. The motel seemed like a labyrinth, its halls stretching endlessly in all directions. The walls closed in around me, and the apparitions clawed at the air, their ethereal forms reaching out for me. In a desperate attempt to escape, I burst through the exit door and into the night. The motel, once a haven, now loomed like a sinister specter against